Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just be presenting a clinical meeting case, which is titled Captivating. This is a story of a 32-year-old gentleman who handled fish, who was a fisherman, presented with the complaints of fever and headache for past 1 year, lower backache, joint pains for 6 months, generalized tiredness and fatigue for 6 months, loss of weight 25 kg over the past 3 months, with loss of appetite and cough for 2 months. And he was a fisherman and he handled fish and discarded and was involved in cutting them. And he had cows at home, so there's chance of animal exposure. He was a known case of he was a smoker for the past 5 years and internal consumer with a reform past 2 years. He had been partially evaluated outside and received short course of antibiotics, cephalosporins outside. An examination, he was emaciated, but he was conscious and oriented. Vitals wise, he was tachycardic, and all peripheral pulses were present. There was no radiofemoral or delay. Blood pressures were found to be normal and consistent across all four upper limbs, across two upper limbs and two lower limbs. Respiratory rate was 16 per minute. He was found to be febrile. There was pallor on examination. There were no peripheral signs of infective endocarditis, like Osler's nodes, Janeway lesions, or hot spots on fundus examination. Cardiovascular system examination inspection, nothing was found to be abnormal. On palpation, there was a hypodynamic apex present in the sixth intercostal space, 2 centimeter lateral to the left mid-clavicle line, and a parasternal heave, which was grade 1. A palpable second heart sound was present in the left second intercostal space. However, there were no thrills. On percussion, this left and second intercostal space was dull. An auscultation, pansystolic murmur grade 3 was heard in the pulmonary area, along with an ejection systolic murmur heard in the tricuspid area. An LVS3 was present and a P2 was loud. Respiratory system examination showed, some crepitations were present in the left inter and infrascapular regions. Abdomen, liver was palpable, just palpable, the liver span of 16 centimeter, and spleen was palpable 2 centimeter below the left costal margin. CNS examination wise, his GCS was 15 by 15. Cranial was a normal. Motor system, there was generalized wasting in bilateral upper limbs and lower limbs. Power was found to be normal. Reflexes were normal. Bilateral plantars were extensor. Sensory system examination was found to be normal. Meningeal signs, neck stiffness and Kernig's was present. So differentials are the clinical complex of pyrexia of unknown origin with clinical examination revealing features of a pulmonary arterial hypertension and a murmur which was audible in the pulmonary area with hepatosplenomegaly. So our infection, so our differentials is included under infections, disseminated TB or an infective endocarditis, autoimmune conditions like vasculitis or SLE, lymphoma, and occult infections like other abscesses or osteomyelitis. What are the labs show? Our hemoglobin showed 7.7 microcytic hypochromic. RDW was elevated. Counts are found to be normal. Platelets slightly low, 1,23,000. LFT showed the AG ratio reversal and mild hepatitis. Alkaline phosphate is 155. Renal functions are normal because he had some features of meningism. CSF studies were done which showed counts of 12 with lymphocytes of 23 on a total of 25 cells. Cultures found to be sterile. Sugars and protein were normal. Blood cultures that we had drawn grew Streptococcus gallolyticus, three of them, which were sensitive to penicillin, cephalosporin, and gentamicin, with MIC to ceftriaxone less than 0.12. We thought of at this point of time that it could be infective endocarditis, and we went ahead with the 2D echocardiogram, and that showed us these findings with the dilated RARV and ASD, congenital heart defect seen measuring 18 millimeters with left to right shunt. A pulmonary valve showed two echogenic masses with independent mobility, measuring 18 by 4 millimeter and 21 by 5 millimeter. And the entire valve structure appeared destroyed. There was severe pulmonary regurgitation as well. All other valves were normal. There were no other vegetations found. There was normal LV systolic function and no regional wall motion abnormality. So our final diagnosis was pulmonary valve infective endocarditis, and the causative organism was a Streptococcus gallolyticus. To look for complications, we did a CT thorax and abdomen, which confirmed these findings of pulmonary arterial hypertension, RA-RB dilatation, along with some evidence of pulmonary embolism, pulmonary infarcts, and moderate hepatosplenomegaly. MRI brain showed a chronic PCA territory infarct. Bone scan showed no features of osteomyelitis, and since this organism, Streptococcus gallolyticus, is associated with translocation of the gut, we went ahead with GI scopies. However, there were no features of GI polyps or any malignancies. So coming to infective endocarditis, it's a bacterial endocarditis caused that enters the bloodstream and settles in the heart lining, a heart valve or a blood vessel. It's uncommon, but people with certain heart conditions, especially those with congenital heart disease, have a greater risk of developing it. There are two forms of IE, acute and subacute IE. Acute develops suddenly and can become life-threatening within days. Subacute develops slowly over a period of weeks to several months. This is a diagram showing us endocarditis on the tricuspid valve. This is the vegetations. So when normal blood components like fibrin and platelets stick to the bacteria, this results in the buildup of vegetation, and this endocarditis can limit the heart's ability to effectively pump blood. And these damaged valves can cause severe leaking, regurgitation of blood back through the valves as well. In addition, what is dangerous is the complications as small pieces of vegetation can break off and travel through the blood vessels to other parts of the body and embolus and cause problems like stroke or tissue damage when they lodge and block blood flow to these tissues. So what are the learning points that I wanted out of this presentation was how common is isolated pulmonary valve endocarditis? Are there practical implications of this, especially in terms of rate of complication and overall prognosis? What are the risk factors for pulmonary valve endocarditis? Can ASD be considered a risk factor for as a congenital heart disease for infective endocarditis, and what are the embolic phenomena associated? So how common is it? Right-sided endocarditis is itself rare, with most studies showing an incidence of isolated right-sided endocarditis being around 10%. Out of this, but the tricuspid valve is associated in 90% of cases, pulmonary valve in very few, with prevalence of around only 2%. But isolated pulmonary valve endocarditis is an even more rare complication of infective endocarditis. The possible reasons being marked variation in hemodynamic pressure gradients across the valves, less frequency of underlying congenital or acquired valvular abnormalities, and lower blood oxygen content in the right chambers. What are the important considerations? So endocarditis involving the pulmonary valve has a benign reversible course, even though it's rare, and typically responds to parenteral IV antibiotic therapy administered for a period of 4 to 6 weeks usually. However, complications like pulmonary valve insufficiency and recurrent septic pulmonary embolism, which is a life-threatening complication, must be kept in mind. Diagnosis is difficult, and it may be missed on transthoracic echocardiography. That's why we should be performing transesophageal echocardiography, which has a higher sensitivity in detecting vegetations and valvular abscesses. The etiologies, so risk factors, what are the risk factors for right-sided infective endocarditis? So 90% of cases are associated with IV drug abusers. However, our patient was not an IV drug abuser. Also, along with other risk factors are central venous catheterization, congenital heart disease, CIED, which is cardiac implantable electronic devices, alcoholism, immunosuppression, left to right shunts, including VSD, which causes damage to the valve and vegetation formation. In terms of organism, what are the etiologies? So basically, Streptococcus is associated in 70% of cases, causing right-sided infective endocarditis. Staphylococcus aureus is associated in 70% of cases. Streptococcus, which this patient had, is a little bit lesser, around 20% of the cases. Enterococcus associated 5% of cases, and less than 1% of cases are fungal or gram-negative bacilli. So again, 70% of the cases of right-sided infective endocarditis are by Staph aureus. So what is the association between cardiac lesions and infective endocarditis? So this is a table showing us the risk of developing infective endocarditis among congenital heart disease patients. So high risk, moderate risk, low risk. So on the left, we see like aortic regurgitation, mitral regurgitation, VSD. And on the right, this patient had actually isolated ASD, which actually comes under low risk of developing infective endocarditis. And ASD has a low chance of infective endocarditis because of a slow speed of the shunt across this ASD. Embolic phenomenon, number of pulmonary valve endocarditis patients can present with pulmonary symptoms mainly because of the septic pulmonary emboli. Like presenting with pleuritis, chest pain, cough, dyspnea can cause pneumonias, empyemas, abscesses. And whenever the peripheral embolic or neurological features occur, we should either think of left-sided endocarditis or a paradoxical embolism if it's a right-sided endocarditis. So our patients had multiple oral infarcts, like a chronic PC infarct on the MRI brain. So since there is a coexisting ASD, there's a strong possibility of paradoxical embolus. Our patients are planned for injecting gentamicin for 3 weeks and injection ceftriaxone for 6 weeks. And cardiothoracic consult said ASD closure with replacement of pulmonary valve for 2 weeks. However, unfortunately, he developed recurrent episodes of massive hemoptysis. Family had signed ward-based comfort care and DNI DNR, and after following one episode of massive hemoptysis of 600 ml, unfortunately, he passed away on 24th of December 2020. So what are the take-home messages? The incidence of right-side infective endocarditis being isolated only 10%. In that also pulmonary valve is only more than 2%. Risk factors, IV drug abusers and implantable electronic devices and Other causes, of course, being staph aureus, most commonly so in 70% presentation, and they mostly present with fever, 90% of them, along with some joint pain, myalgias, and they hardly present with a murmur. Our patient had a murmur. If you find a murmur, please think of left-sided infective endocarditis, and complications are septic pulmonary emboli.
Thank you, Praneeth, for your presentation. Dr. Ramya, would you like to add anything? Okay, would anybody else like to ask any questions? Praneeth, can you put up your list of differentials?
Yes.
So, okay. Would you like to revise it and put infective
Yeah.
endocarditis first before
Yes, ma'am.
disseminated TB based on what you found from your examination?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Sure. Okay, would anybody else like to ask a question?
Praneeth, was colonoscopy was done or only gastroscopy?
No, sir. Unfortunately, so only could go ahead with the gastroscopy. We were planning a colonoscopy, sir, but just prior to that, sir, he
Yeah, because
deteriorated.
Laliticus was earlier known as bovis, and
Yes.
it's
Yes.
associated with the colon cancer, not with upper
Yes.
GI malignancy.
Correct, sir. Correct.
Colonoscopy would have been there, but I guess the patient right.
Yes, sir. Correct, sir.
Okay, thank you, Praneeth. We'll move on to our last presentation. Christina from Medicine One will be presenting.